Beginner's Guide to Running Marathons. James, would you like to introduce yourself further?
Thanks very much, Karina. Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. So my name is James Dean. And I'm coming from James Dean Coaching. So I'm a mindset coach, life coach, and very much an endurance and fitness fanatic. So very much into marathon running and triathlon. That's the other sport that I would participate in.
Brilliant. Very impressive, James. So I met James a few weeks ago at a networking group, and James was saying that when I followed James online, I noticed that you did run marathons. So I was saying, God, I'd love to get someone on the podcast like you. So to give me tips and to give my clients tips who are running marathons, who's running the Dublin Marathon this year, because I know a lot of them would be working on their strength and conditioning and their runs, but I know
Yep.
that your invaluable tips would help them along. Um, so, James, how did you get into running?
Yeah, so I got into running, it would have been around sort of end of 2012, sort of beginning of 2013. So I actually got into running through initially was the part of my own sort of weight loss sort of journey back then. So in sort of March 2012, it was coming up to my wedding day. I wanted to get fit and sort of lose some weight and look healthy for the day. And I thought I'd try running out. Before then, I was always into team sports, but I wanted to do something more sort of individual. So I started running then, and I did every sort of thing you shouldn't do as a beginner in the sense of I didn't really follow a plan. I kind of just went out and tried ran as much as I could, and actually injured myself very quickly. So I kind of got more a base fitness going, more structure into just general sort of just my own sort of strength, I suppose, and conditioning in that way at that point. And then I kind of went back into running after the wedding. We got married. We wanted to do something to keep ourselves going, and I was able to run then. I wasn't as getting injured, and I set up to do my first half marathon in the August of 2013, and since then that's when it really took off.
Wow, brilliant. Just to go back, James, when you said that you injured yourself, because I find this
Yeah,
quite a lot
yep,
with people that their knees. So what steps did you take to build yourself up? You mentioned strength and conditioning.
yeah.
Do you want to go
So
into more
yeah, no, so
detail?
it's a really good question to start with because so my assumption was I'll just be able to go out run every night and run as hard as I can every evening and thinking everything will be fine. But I'd come from a point of very little sort of fitness background, that point in time in sense of where my level of fitness was and my strength was, and I was carrying a bit more weight as well. So my muscles just couldn't cope with it. So what I actually did to sort of build that base up is I just did some home workouts. Essentially, I had a very sort of good old fashioned cheesy fitness DVD from the Ministry of Sound. And it was all those things. It was like, it was squats, it was lunges, it was, standing, skipping, it was, knees up. It was real sort of what we would, is from your perspective and my perspective, is real basic foundational stuff to build up those big core muscle groups that I know about. So it's like, your posture, things like that as well. So, but really strengthening this the legs in the sense of your glutes, your quads, all the way to your calves. So and what the next thing I suppose from there is actually what is that core strength in the sense of just getting your body used to using those muscles. But the next thing is like to when I got back into running is I found a running plan. I stuck to a some sort of structure, and I quickly learned is for myself, and I was still do it to this day, is like ideally I don't run on consecutive days. So that's the one of the biggest things. If I do it, it's only like maybe once a week that you'd be running one day and then run the following day. Otherwise, it's having a day break in between. I find is the best way to avoid injuries. And we can go into a little bit further in the sense of what you do on those other days to help that as well.
Okay, because that's really interesting. Because I was actually
Mm.
only talking to a client and a friend of mine last night who, with these recent times that we're isolating, self-isolating, she
Mm.
started running because my studio is closed. And she said
Yep.
last night that her chest was really sore. So I
Yep.
kind of said, she goes, "Is it your workouts online?" I said, "What way do you run?" And she showed me because I called to her door
Mm.
doing our distancing,
Yeah.
and her posture was falling in. So I
Yeah.
was like that. I was trying to explain to her, you're putting too much pressure on your chest maybe when you're running, because she found her chest
Yep.
muscles were really sore. So it's really important that, especially if people, would you agree, James, now are starting to run, because gyms are closed at the moment and all of
Yep.
that, and running is the best format to release a bit of energy.
Yep.
What what tips could you give them for the beginner runners now, that maybe potentially they could run a marathon at the end of the year,
Yep.
to help with their posture, to help with pain, knee pain,
Yeah.
back pain? What tips would you
Yep.
give them, James?
Absolutely, yes, some great stuff there. So the first thing in relation to posture is that thing of you want to have, having your shoulders nice and broad, your chest kind of up. You want to have a slight lean into your run, so you kind of want to have a little bit lean forward, but you really want to have that chest nice and sort of out, sort of. It's not quite the same way if you're doing a sort of some sort of lifting, you'd be really trying to pull your shoulders back, but you kind of want to push your shoulder blades back a little bit and kind of just open up that chest so you can breathe in nice and sort of deep, and you don't want to be hunched, you don't want to be sort of moving into your head coming down. So think of your head position. You kind of want to be looking not directly ahead, but you want to be looking, say, maybe sort of 2 meters to the sort of ground in front of you. So you kind of keep that sort of head is slightly tilted to slight tilt towards the ground, but you're still keeping that chest nice and sort of high and keeping it nice and open. In relation to things that about sort of avoiding injuries, and you're starting out initially, it's like accepting where you are at the moment and just kind of pushing it along. You don't want to push too much too soon, too fast too soon. I would definitely, first things is like either get some sort of plan or download one of there's some great apps up there. So Runkeeper, Couch to 5K, Strava is probably slightly more advanced. And then you've got Map My Run as well. So there's some great apps out there. And they will talk you through a full program, how long you should jog for, and then walk for, things like that. If you're brand new to it, you got to get your head around that you won't be running constantly to start with. You're going to run, you're going to jog for a little bit, you're going to maybe jog for 2 minutes, walk for a minute, jog for 2 minutes, walk for a minute, and then you'll build it up. So there's that sort of allowing the time to take for this to sort of build up, because if you try and just jog for 30 minutes straight without doing anything, you're going to injure yourself, no question. So, or what you're gonna have is some serious sort of aches and pains afterwards, as we refer to as that DOMS, delay of onset muscle soreness. You want to avoid that as much as possible. So it's learning to, when you say pace yourself, it starts from the straight away. Your very first sort of going out for a run, manage yourself. And the idea of it, you could think of it, oh well, I'll tell you what, I'll just run until I feel tired and then I'll walk. But you run further than you need to if you do it that approach. It takes initially that great bit of discipline and focus to listen to either the app or follow the program that you've been given. So if it says to jog for 2 minutes and then walk, you'll after those first 2 minutes think, well, I feel fine, I could keep going. Stick to the program. That's the very first thing, and that's the whole way through with anything. When you're doing initially starting out a couch to 5K or going all the way to a marathon, you stick to the program and what it says.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great advice, James. And then if someone is starting from scratch, and
Yep.
within these times they're out running 3 times a week now at the moment, and
Mm.
they got this notion and they have set a goal, and they said, right, you know what, I'm going to run the marathon at the end of the year. If I don't run the marathon at the end of the year, I'm definitely going to do it at the start of next year. What in between would you suggest then that they do? As I love the way you brought it back to the basics, the getting
Yep.
the bigger muscle groups active and working to take the
Yeah.
pressure off the smaller groups, which would be your
Yep.
chest, your back, your neck. So if someone decided to do the couch to 5K and build that up first, let's just say they're out running 3 times a week. Would you suggest doing maybe 1 or 2 mini strength and conditioning sessions in between?
Yeah. Absolutely. So if you're getting into sort of this sort of space and wanting to sort of get into running, definitely I think you need to be aiming to do a run sessions at least 3 times a week. That's the minimum. Especially if you want to aim towards getting into marathon
The
running.
marathon.
Some marathon programs would have you sort of running maybe 5, 6 days a week. I personally think that's a little too much, and it was a little too much for me when I did my first sort of marathons. I was doing like a 4 or 5 sessions a week, and it took its toll on me. So I would, if you're going for your first marathon, you might have to do 4 sessions, but I wouldn't do any more than 4 run sessions a week personally. And I think that's more than enough, especially because you have to think where what the reasons you want to do the marathon for. Look, there's only so many people who are really fast and elite. The rest of us are kind of just wanting to get around and enjoy it. So in that respect, for your time to dedicate towards it, I think you need to do at least four. Sorry, at least minimum of three, and that's a lot. What any programs that I create, I'd go with a three-run strategy. But then you've got to then be training or doing some sort of exercise 5 or 6 days a week. So you are going to be doing some sort of cross training on those off days. So if we take it as a 3 session a week program, so you're going to run 3 sessions a week, so two during the week and then one at the weekend, or whatever way your working patterns work on your essentially your day off. In between those days, you're going to be doing some sort of cross training. So I would, to sort of one, strengthen those other muscles, or sort of give them some sort of ability to relax, or sort of things like that. So the strengthen sort of the cross training, I would be suggesting it'd be some sort of home workout, not some mad CrossFit type workout. It'd be very sort of controlled things like squats, bridges. A lot of stuff you want to be working towards on your back, your posterior chain, things like that, because running is a forward motion, is using a lot of motion forward. So we want to make sure we're even. So some very simple home workouts, but not something that's going to uh, affect your run the following day. Any cross training we're doing, so there'll be some simple strength and conditioning stuff, should support the running. We don't want to take away from it. So if you're going out doing a running session and then the following day you're going to do some sort of real high intensity 20-minute sort of hit session, that's going to take away from the next day's run. So it's about any supporting work we're going to do, which I recommend, is there to support your running, as opposed to take away from it. Other cross training activities you can do is definitely be swimming, because it's a really good overall body workout, less impact at the moment. It's obviously very limited because it's with everything that's going on. And the other thing would be cycling as well. So again, a less impact, but it keeps that sort of cardio workout going. But that sort of conditioning side of it is, really going to help. But it also, something other people, I don't know myself, but yoga, Pilates, anything that's going to assist your mobility is really going to support your running.
Brilliant. Lots of information there.
Mm,
I just to revert back to what you said was that your strength and conditioning has to assist your running. So
yeah,
your end goal would be that you want to run either a 5, a 10, a half marathon, or a full marathon.
yeah,
So your strength and conditioning, so your end goal is not to build massive muscle. Your end goal is
yeah.
just to keep the muscle activated to support your runs, that you're not going to injure yourself. I love that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and say, because I'll use myself as an example. So my next sort of run was due to marathon was due to be in London in April. We know, which is unfortunately postponed, but rightly postponed as well. And just in the last month or so, I haven't been able to run because I picked up a slight injury, which it's probably coming to one of your questions, I think, in sense of people get injured. You said about your knees and things like that, and I was actually getting pain in my knee, but it wasn't my knee that was the issue. It was my muscles, and in particular, it was my glutes that had got really too tight because I had neglected my conditioning and my activation of my muscles over the last sort of few months. So, and I thought it was that thing of like, been doing Ironmans, I'll kind of get away with it type thing, and I didn't. So we all kind of forget sometimes those things, but it's how important they actually are, because that injury I got, like, it takes a lot to sort of undo it. So if you keep on top of it, so that the activation stuff, so it could be, some things, your cross training day could actually just be a session of really good mobility work. So it could be like doing some sort of, some self sort of foam rolling, things like that, and then a just real slow sort of controlled sort of stretching, or sort of almost doing like an active warm up without the exercise, if you know what I mean, just that activation thing, because that'll help with the recovery and then help prepare for the following day as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant, James, because three people come to mind already who started training for the marathon, the Dublin Marathon this year,
Mm,
and they have tight IT bands. And all physios they went to said the same
yep,
thing. They gave them
yep,
their little band, their
yep,
little assisted band to, and all
yeah,
they're given is foam rolling on the side
Yep.
of the muscle from the knee up to the hip for visual purposes, the IT
Yep.
band, and some glute work for activation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Would you recommend, James, doing some bringing out a little band before your run and using it as your
Yeah.
warm up? The little band
Yeah.
over the knee, the resistant band
Yeah.
for people that don't know what they are, they're just a little hoop.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah.
recommend that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, because it's hard to, so the traditional or the old school way of thinking was just like you'd warm up on your first kilometer, you'd warm up on your first few hundred meters as you started to jog, and you will get that warm up, but that's really going to be for your sort of cardiovascular, for your breathing, your heart, in a sense of, because the glutes is the really sort of literally the pun, the big one. So we know the
Yeah,
glutes is our essentially our bum, those big sort of muscles in around our backside. So, and they're like our engines for our muscles, for us, for anything, but especially for running, and they're the muscles that should be doing all the work. But because of the way our modern day lives is, a lot of sitting, a lot of leaning forward instead of a lot of jobs we do, driving on buses, on trains, computers, they kind of get neglected, and they go asleep. They're not in that active mode. So what we're doing when we're running is we're using all the other muscles that should be supporting those big glute muscles. So using a band, so almost like if you're wrapping the band around you, say like around your knees or something, and doing some simple squats, doing some squats and some side steps, doing some glute bridges or something like that. And when you're doing those really sort of intense to try and like essentially squeeze the glutes and then relax, and that really get them activated, will be much more beneficial than thinking I'm just going to jog to warm up. So doing those sort of activation exercises will definitely be beneficial to when you're going out then to run.
brilliant. And I suppose the key point there to take away is your first kilometer is only to warm up your lungs. If you do the
Yeah.
activation first, you'll warm up your
Yeah.
engine, which is your glutes,
Yeah.
to take the pressure off the rest of your body parts. Brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can hear people in my mind now who's going to be listening to this are going to be like, okay, I'll do what James said. I'll do what James said.
Yeah.
Because it is, you have to look after yourself. It's important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Because, and I
okay.
think just to emphasize that point as well, because, and it's getting it in from the very start, and because then it becomes part of just your run routine. It becomes part of the process. And because a lot of the things when it comes into sort of specifically, if you're going into, I think there's a definition between wanting to just run as a sort of as something to do, and as something a way of keeping fit. That's great, and you can just tick along with 3 runs a week and do those activation things, and they'll benefit. But if you're going into, right, I'm going into marathon mode, I'm training specifically for a race, you want to bring those things in right at the start, because you don't want to get sort of 10 weeks in or something, or only be 4 weeks out, and then your IT band comes and bites you, because your race is essentially over. You won't have the time to recover then. So it's
Yeah,
it's getting those things in right at the start to give you the best opportunity to make it to your event.
yeah, exactly. And when that IT ban goes, it
Yeah.
goes, it went on me. It was so sore and my whole leg
Yeah.
locked out.
Yeah.
And I was recovering for 2 weeks, foam rolling every day
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
activating my glutes every day with the band and the glute bridges. That's all I did. I had to give up my work in the gym at the time and they sent me to a physio. And eventually the knee unlocked and I was able to walk,
Yeah.
but it was
Yeah.
really sore. So
Yeah.
if I was from next week onwards and I've been
Yep.
running the last 2 weeks because I've been working from home. So I've been running 3 times a week, couch to 5K. So from next
Yep.
week onwards for my first run, if anyone was listening to this, I would get a little band, a little resistance band, bring it out with me on my first run, activate my glutes with some squats with the band over my knee, and maybe do that for about 5 minutes until I feel the glutes working, and then do a little stretch for the hips, and then put my little band in my pocket, and off I go for my couch 5K first run. And
Yep.
chest up tall, get the lungs, get the air into the lungs,
Yeah.
and all the tips you gave, and start from
Yeah.
scratch with the right habits.
Yeah, and there's some great sort of tips that I'll share that I got from a running sort of event I went to a few years ago, and it was one of the speakers we had there was Katrina McKinnon, who's a fabulous sort of Irish marathon runner, and just in relation, so one of the things that I remember in sense of how we actually run. So we got one thing is that chest up and way we're looking, but the other thing as well is like. She gave a sense of your stride and how you actually run. And there's this one thing that she kind of a couple of little sort of sayings to keep you sort of how you're running. Are you doing it right in some ways? And it was like, don't let the knees. Was it? Don't let the knees pass. Don't let the nose pass the toes. So you kind of like,
Ah,
so you don't want to lean too far forward. So you don't want, and you don't want to, so you don't want to sort of, so you kind of keep in that sort of stride. Sort of don't let the knees, don't let the toes, don't let the nose pass the toes. So yes, you don't want to be leaning too far forward, and you kind of keeping that body nice and sort of straight. Sort of a little bit taller. So you don't want your feet to be completely massively stretching out in front of your stride, but you don't want it too choppy either. You want to kind of have a little bit of a if there. And the other one was loose, limp lower legs. So loose, limp lower legs. So your ankles, your knees, you want it to be kind of nice and loose. You don't want it to be sort of like rigid. You know what I mean? So your ankles is just as important as your knees and your hips. So the way that you run, you don't want to be running with with a stiff ankle. You want to have it nice and loose. So the last thing that should leave the floor is your toes. So it's like so you ideally you want to run as much as you can on the front of your foot, so kind of from the ball of your foot to your toes, and the toe should be the last thing. It shouldn't be your heel, if you know what I mean. So those two little sayings I keep to myself as well, like loose limp lower legs. Really good
that's
one to
funny
remember.
actually, James, because yesterday I walk really fast. Like I walk super,
Hmm.
super fast. I'm better off jogging, but I just love walking fast. And yesterday, because I'm walking twice a day now, which is very unusual for me, on top
Yep.
of my own 30-minute workout, I found my ankle was getting really, really stiff.
Yeah.
And that was the
Yep.
one thing that my physio said to me years ago when the IT ban locked out, because I broke
Yep.
this particular leg, the right one. He said my ankle mobility isn't great. And that's
Yep.
what he said. What the tip he gave me was obviously do my rotations on my ankles before I
Yep.
go. And the one tip he gave me was try let your heel off. Just let it
Yeah.
off and try hit the back of
Yep.
your bum so it's not stiff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like what you
Yeah.
said, power off the toe and let the ankle just freely go back so I'm not
Exactly.
stiff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah, and so when it comes to things like when you're doing going back to things like your foam rolling or you're doing those sort of exercises, when I was in with my masseuse in the last few weeks to try and free up my sort of legs, and they were in pretty bad shape because I'd neglected them so much. Um, he did a lot of work around my quads and that, but a lot of work as well on so the muscles to the right of on the front of your shin as such, like those muscles just to the right of your tibia, so don't neglect sort of everyone looks at the calf, which is great, you need to work on that, but there's also it doesn't feel like there's much, but it's it might not be sort of rolling on it, but maybe getting a ball or pushing the roller onto it, but your ankle mobility is definitely going to be something that's going to help it all. It's funny as well because when everyone thinks I've got a pain in my knee or I've got a pain in my back or something, it's like it's rarely where the pain is where the issue is. It's usually something else that's the sort of probably like the weakest point, and it's the manifestation of the injury, but it's not necessarily where there's an issue. So for me, when I'm getting the pain in my knee, I know it's my hip and my glutes. It's like it's everything has a connection. So we have to manage as much as we can all parts of the body as well.
brilliant. That's great. What we might do at the end, James, we might move on to the next question. We might recap because I have everything wrote
Yeah,
down
for
here.
sure.
We'll
Yep.
recap on because I know that I would get really overwhelmed because I know lots of people who started running for the first time this week and last week. And that's why I said we might do this
Yep.
podcast to reduce the injury because
Yeah,
then there's
absolutely.
nothing worse than we think we're machines that we can keep going. So we'll recap at the
Yeah.
end, just maybe
Yeah,
little
great.
steps to not
Yep.
overwhelm. Um, anyone then as well. So let's get back onto we've done
Yeah.
our 5K. We're getting a
Yep.
bit confident and we're like, you know what? I think I'm going to sign up for half a marathon and then a marathon.
Yep.
So what would be the next step then that I've done my 5K, I ran my 10, feeling quite comfortable. I'm doing my in between work, which my strength conditioning
Yep.
and my stretching and my foam rolling and I feel strong. So the next
Yep.
step then is half a marathon and a marathon.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So once you start getting into the sort of half marathon sort of space, it's kind of when there's a bit of you could do it even for 10K, you're kind of starting to shift, but especially when we're getting really into sort of focused sort of training programs then, especially for a half marathon. So we're getting, because when it comes to something like, again, we're going to take away the sort of real sort of club and elite people who can just keep running, but for the rest of us, it's we're generally going to be building towards an event, and then we're going to be dropping back. It's like it's very hard on the body to just run all the time. So I would, if I was to just run as a general, it would just maybe doing like 5K, 5K. But if you're going into a full, I'm going for a half marathon, we're going to go essentially into a training block, and it's going to be very specific, and that's the difference. So if you're comfortable, or you're reasonably comfortable 10K runner, I can tell you now, you are absolutely able to do a half marathon and then a marathon, no question. It's now just having the ability to then really shift yourself into, okay, I'm going to be focused for the next, whatever it is, six, generally for a sort of like for a half marathon, you're talking sort of a 12 to 16 week program. And for a marathon, you're talking a 16 to maybe 20 week program, depending on where you are in your running sort of experience. But so if you're going into then from 10K up to half marathon, really then, obviously at the moment we're in slightly different circumstances because unfortunately events are being postponed or cancelled at the moment. But ideally what you want to be able to do is pick the event that you want to do, because they're going to be on a fixed date, and then you're going to work back from there. So if we take half marathon at the moment that I touch wood that still go ahead at the moment, is that you got to say the Rock and Roll half marathon in Dublin, for example. There's one I can remember that's usually around August, the middle of August. So you would pick the event that you're going to go for, and you would count back 16 weeks, and that's then going to be the start of your training program. So the whole purpose of that program is you peak on the day of the event. So it's very much changing the focus from, I'm just going to go out and just enjoy running and get fit. It's like, no, we're now moving from that sort of thinking to, I need to focus in a sense of to peak for the event. The same for a marathon. You train to be in a position to run that distance or complete that distance on the day itself. So it's a very much more specific type of training.
Well, I suppose it's like a couch to 5K. If you bring it back to the
Yep.
beginning, you're not going to go
Yeah.
out and run 5K if you're starting from scratch. And
Absolutely.
I love the point that you said if you can do a 10K comfortably, you can
Yep.
definitely, the mindset has to
Absolutely.
shift that you can do
Yeah.
the half a
Yeah.
marathon. Because
Yeah. If
I've
you do,
ladies who, yeah,
no, sorry, no, because I was just going to say, because like a couch to 5K program would generally be maybe 8 weeks if you're starting out, to be able to be then complete a 5K and a sort of comfortably that. If you go in, then you could sort of, if you wanted to go to 10K, again you're probably talking from that initial 8 weeks, probably another 8 weeks, maybe even six, depending on your ability then to get to do 10K, and then so it just extends a little bit each time.
brilliant. I love that. I've all this wrote down to put this in the show notes. So couch to 5K, give yourself 8 weeks and then
Yeah,
follow on from 10K. And if you can do 10K, change your mindset that you can definitely do a half marathon to a full marathon.
absolutely. Yeah,
Brilliant.
absolutely.
Excellent. So it's little goal setting along the way.
Yeah,
Um, regarding footwear and all that, then James,
yeah,
you'd probably get away with okay footwear up to 10K, and then after
yeah,
10K, if you're looking to go further to improve on your long runs, what would you
yeah.
recommend for footwear?
Yeah, so footwear is an interesting one because actually I think that was one of the things that sort of helped me, or not didn't help me, in the sense I got injured because I actually changed brands at the end of last year. So I think that did have an effect on my injury as well. So it is really important. Your footwear, your runners are the things that are going to be getting you around, and there's a huge amount of variety out there, and there's the from the minimalist, in a sense of like the barefoot almost running type approach, where you've got like sort of, they're barely shoes, it's almost like a mitten for your foot, all the way up to a running shoe that will have a couple of inches on the heel, and every brand will tell you this is the best thing for you, and this is the thing that's going to not prevent you getting injured. When it comes to picking out the running shoe that you want, there's definitely a balance between going to someone. You need to go to see someone, I think, if you're brand new to this. Sorry, to answer the first question, couch to 5K, whatever pair of running shoes you have, if they're comfortable and they fit you well, they will do you fine. If you're starting to move on to that sort of potentially even 10K, but definitely onto half marathon, you really need to go in and get some specific shoes and running shoes. Any of the sports shops now will have, once they're hopefully they're open again, they'll have someone there who'll be able to help you. A lot of them will have what we call like a gait analysis. So you can go on and essentially go onto a treadmill, and they'll kind of look at you, or they'll do like put your foot into a sort of a mold type thing. Depending on which one you go to, you'll have a more in-depth sort of experience. But the idea of it is to find, in a sense, a running shoe that's going to support your natural sort of movement of your foot. So whether you're sort of like you've got a supination or pronation, so it's whether your foot rolls out or whether it rolls in, or whether you land flat-footed, and potentially different runners will support that. But also the really important thing though is there's a little bit of trial and error, because unfortunately, you have to start running, and it can take some time of trying to find the right brand. Now, what I've found when I've searched for runners is like I'm really finding something that kind of suits my foot. So, for example, the front of my foot is quite wide, so I needed a wide front foot to assist me. And I just happened to find a brand of runners. So I run in Nike Frees. It's not necessarily because of the brand being Nike. It's just like I just like that wide front foot. But if you prefer something that's kind of your feet are narrow and you want to be something that's more snug on your foot, it might be a Brooks or it could be Asics. So it really is, but you need to go into someone and have a real chat with them and get an understanding of what your goals are. How do you run? And then they'll assist you in that way. But go in and chat to someone in one of the stores is the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to give the runners a chance to wear in,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's something that I found
mm.
when I just randomly
Yep,
did a 10K last year and I had a new pair of runners. I was in
yeah.
bits.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so, yeah, it comes into everything. So it's kind of like if you're coming into, I'm sure we're covered in a bit, but if you're coming into a couch to 5K or anything, it's like whatever you run in is what you're going to race in, so you need to sort of find, and so it's really a good place to start. If your whole thing, I want to run a marathon tomorrow, well, maybe I'll run a marathon. It's great, but start slowly. Think of the 5K and use almost your 5K sort of training or your 10K training is to find the runners that you're looking for. And there's a point in sense of price, in a sense of what you should spend on it. And I can't remember, I was reading an article or something before. There comes a point where the amount of money you spend actually has no difference. So, you could buy something that's maybe worth €50 versus €100. The €100 in that respect probably is going to be a little bit, it's going to be a better runner. As soon as you maybe go over €150 to €200, there's very little difference in what the benefit of what you're paying for in that extra 50, 100, €200. So, I say €100 to €140 pair of runners is going to be better than a €50 pair of runners. But something that's €200 versus the 140, there's very little technology or assistance in that extra sort of money you're spending. But I think in the sense of to get sort of real sort of quality runners, if you're going into half marathon marathons, you're looking to be spending €100 to maybe €150 in a pair of runners. But if you're looking for 5K, maybe up as 10K, a sort of 50 to 100 will probably do you.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Do you follow Brian Keane Fitness? He's
I
done a lot of
have before, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I love his he gets his runners in decathlon. I'm just trying to look up
yep,
their
yeah,
brand
yeah,
here. So I've
yep,
seen that he decathlon, I'm just trying to look up their brand here, Karma or something, but he got their brand for the ultramarathons. And
yep,
he found them really good. He just happened to find
yeah,
the right one.
yep,
So
yep.
again, you don't
Oh
have to
yeah,
go off and spend.
no, absolutely. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of the branded ones. As I said, the reason I run in the ones that I have is just because they suited me. They suit me in the way that my runs and prevented. Tell you what it was actually. The reason I picked with those runners is it stopped me getting blisters. That's the main reason I went for that particular brand, because I ran in all different types of shoes and different runs. I kept getting blisters on the inside of my foot. I tried these ones and I stopped getting blisters. So that's really probably the thinking back, one of the main reasons I went for the runner that I use today. But unfortunately, it was a bit of trial and error, because you don't know until you start getting into running them really when you find it. But absolutely, Decathlon, and there's one going to be hopefully opening in the IKEA in Ballymun in the summer and stuff. Decathlon's a fantastic shop. Obviously, we know we've got Elvery's as a brand around Ireland as well. Otherwise, you get some great deals online. Sports Direct in the UK still do, sending it to Ireland, or even if you know the runner you want, you might find something on Amazon and things like that as well. So there's a huge amount of variety, but initially, definitely go in and chat to someone.
Yeah, I was just about to say that the key point to take away is go get your information first and then do
Yeah,
your research after that, then
yeah,
of what
absolutely.
position your foot is in first, because it's really
Yeah,
important. Um,
absolutely.
so, James, let's just say that's really great information there. It's 16 weeks back for half a marathon and 20 weeks back for a marathon. And then
Yeah,
let's just say in terms of the Dublin Marathon's October, isn't it? If
yep. So
someone
yeah,
was
it's
so 20 weeks back from that, that's when the initial real training would start.
yeah, yeah,
Before
exactly.
that, would you recommend doing long runs before that or just doing your 10 to 16 or what would you recommend?
Yeah, so depending, so if you're kind of a if you're a real first time marathon runner, you're probably going for sort of like a 20-week program. If you're kind of a or you're kind of a you want a little bit extra sort of build up to it. Otherwise, if you're kind of a comfortable sort of 10K and done half marathons, a 16-week program will definitely get you there. So just did some dates earlier. So all going well, touch wood. 25th
Yeah.
of October is when the Dublin Marathon will take place this year. So 16 weeks back from that, I worked it out, would be you'd be starting the 6th of July, which would be a Monday. And if you're going for a 20-week program, it'd be starting around the 8th of June. Those would be your two starting dates of when you're getting into specific block training. Now, if you're starting out on a sort of a marathon sort of program, your sort of long run, and we'll explain that what is in a second, it's probably going to start out around 10K. So it's not starting out at what would be considered massive distance. 10K is roughly about 6 miles. So you don't necessarily need to run any longer than that beforehand, because the danger is in sense of if you think, oh, the logic would be, oh, I'm building up miles before I start. The other way I would think it is actually that you're tiring yourself out. You're using up too much energy. Remember, marathon running is about peaking with your level of fitness at the day itself. So if you do too much too soon, you are just going to be your legs are going to be shot and your whole energy system is going to be shot. Because the thing is, like, training for endurance sport, and marathon running is endurance sport, it is hard on the body. You're getting to a point where you're going to be doing sort of potentially in some weeks you might run something like 30K a week. You know what I mean? So, it's you've got to really pace it in that way. So I would be ticking over beforehand. Most of the running is maybe 10, 12K before you get into that program proper.
Yeah, that's good because that's the point that I wanted to get across because I
Yeah.
know some girls who are continuously training for the marathon and they're running really, really long
No,
runs
no,
at the moment. So that's
no.
really good to have the dates and the dates there
Because
set that
yeah, no, at the moment, if you've got your spot for the October Marathon Dublin this year, there's no need to panic at the moment, not at all. If anything, the base I would be building at the moment would be doing the most I would be running would be 10K at a weekend. And if you're, which maybe between an hour and maybe an hour and 15 to depending on your pace, maybe an hour and a half if you're at the sort of the back of the pack type thing. But that's the most I would be running is 10K. And just what I'd be focusing more now is the stuff we spoke at the start, is that strength work, it's that posture work. It's kind of like focus on your technique, focus on your breathing, focus on your getting your kit right, do all that sort of foundation stuff. So as opposed to thinking I have to run as far as I can now, because that's just gonna one, it's April, so it's sorry, not even April, it's March. It's you'll burn out real quick. So it's you got to really sort of just be able to just at the moment get those foundation things in, work out all your kits and stuff, and just work out your routine, your sort of enjoyment of it, because there'll be points when you get into a program proper that you will want to quit. So get those stuff built in now, so when you come to do those more challenging runs, then you don't have to worry about those other things.
Yeah, I love that, James, because I do know people who are training severe now. And as you said, your system needs to recover
Mm,
and your system can
mm.
only, it's like a
Do so
car.
much.
If you put a car
Yep,
through so much work and so much road
yep,
and not look after it with a service and not
yep,
change the tires, the car's going to
yep,
burn out. So
yep,
that's really good. Look after the foundation bits now,
yeah,
your runners, your strength conditioning, your posture, your breathing, and get
yeah,
that 10K solid that you
yeah,
can run it
absolutely.
in your sleep.
Yeah.
And then
I
everything
think,
else
yeah,
will be,
absolutely. And I think just I want to just because of people maybe watching this and clarify what we mean by the long run and sort of the running. And we talk. So I don't know if you're going to ask the question, but I'll jump in a sense
yeah, I
of,
was just about to ask
when,
you.
yeah,
So let's
perfect.
get
So in sense
into
of,
our 20-week training plan.
yeah. So
Yeah.
when we talk about what does a week look like is kind of the thing, and what do we mean? So if we take it on the basis of a 3 run a week program, and I will share some sort of programs that I've already created as well. We'll put that up later as well. But if we were to look at a 3 session a week program, the way I would divide that out is, so say if we go, say we're going to run on a Tuesday, Thursday, and a Saturday. Those are the days we're going to pick, and it's going to be, ideally you want to be doing it the same each week. So we're going to do Tuesday, we're going to do Thursday, and then we're going to do Saturday. So we've got a day in between, and we can do our cross training. Sunday is going to be our complete rest day. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are going to be our cross training days. So we're going to be doing something, whether it be a strength and conditioning session, it's going to be maybe a Pilates, yoga, or a swim, whatever it is. But those other days are running day, and then Sundays are complete rest day. Okay. So on the Tuesday, it's our first run of the week. It's kind of our sort of starting run. So it's kind of the way I would look at it that way. It's going to be our shortest run of the week, but in some way it's going to be then our quickest run, or our pace. The pace is going to be the fastest of the week, wherever you are in your pacing. And generally it's going to be, starting, with a marathon program, it's going to be maybe 5 to 6, maximum 7K, something like that. Generally going to be about 5 or 6 kilometers. Then it's going to be a sort of ideally it's going to be a straight run, and you'll just kind of be, if you were like say if you were a 30K 5K runner, if you're a 30-minute 5K runner, whatever you're trying to work out your pacing now, you're going to be slightly slower than your 5K pace, or roughly around it. So but that pace is not the pace you're going to be running the marathon at. It's going to be quicker than your marathon pace, because we're in that session. What we're essentially trying to do is kind of build up a bit of our speed, a little bit of our sort of speed endurance, and a breathing in that way. The second run we're going to be doing on the Thursday, it's going to be slightly longer, so maybe getting towards the sort of 7 to maximum, and that is maybe a 10K across the program, and that pace is going to be a little bit slower. But is what we call almost like trying to get into that threshold. You kind of like, how long can you hold a pace for? We want it nice and even across the whole session. So it's really, we're not getting to the point where we're getting to failure, in a sense of where we're really heavily breathing, but we're kind of a little bit there. But we want to be able to just hold that pace. And then the last one is the long run. And this is really where the main work is done. This is where you got to really show up every week, and you got to nail it, because the long run is where it's going to increase every week. And that's why we have it on a weekend or your day off. And you want your second day off, ideally that following day. So that's why we run on a Saturday, we have our Sunday to rest. And each week that long run is just going to progressively just increase each week. And that's where we're going to really learn about, well, what's the pace I'm going to try and do in a marathon. You have to switch it, but that long run is, this is my marathon essentially each week. And this is where I'm going to learn about things like my pacing, my nutrition. Everything is going to be really benefited in that long run.
And within the long run, then it's increasing it every week. It's just a little
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Yeah,
Would you give a guideline then if you were doing 10K,
yeah,
increase it to
yeah.
like 14
So
on the
So the
first?
way, if you look at it from a 16, if you go to the 16-week program, you essentially are roughly doing plus 2K a week. That's
Okay,
essentially
that's
all
good.
you're going to do it. Yeah. So the way, if you real simple, if you go like, so you go from 10 to 12, 14, whatever, plus 2K every week. And so the interesting about marathon running is like, your sort of full on big training will kind of stop about 4 weeks before the event, because then we actually do what we call as a taper. So you're going to build and build and build and build, and the most you're ever going to run in your training is going to be either, it depends on which way you run and you think about it, it's either going to be miles, it'll be 20 miles, or if you're running kilometers, it's going to be kind of running in 30 to 32 kilometers, one of those, max. But that's the max you're going to run, and you're going to run that generally 4 weeks before the event. And that's your last big run, because what we need to do, because there's so intense and so much sort of pressure on the body, and that you need the body to recover. It sounds counterintuitive for the 3 weeks before you, the 3 weekends before your event, that you're actually running less, but that's to aid your recovery, aid the body to sort of, the muscles to relax, get that energy level back into those muscles. So, but if you go on, like, I'm just going to add 2K a week, which is roughly what, a mile and sort of mile and a half a week as such, you'll get to that point over the 16, over the, so when you get to sort of week 12, you'll be hitting your biggest run.
That's actually really doable, and that's
Yeah,
really smart for
yeah,
people to do that way.
yeah,
So within this, because I'm looking here, if this wrote down, so for someone that's able to comfortably run a 10K, run one and run two are going to be absolutely fine. They'd be like, as you
yeah,
said, your little warm-ups. So then the longer runs, I'd say from about 16K onwards, 16K below, they
yeah.
should be okay. But the runs where they start going 16K over, you mentioned nutrition. Do you
Yep,
recommend bringing something with you, or do you know the way you
absolutely.
bring sugar,
Yeah.
sachets?
So
What do you
yeah,
recommend?
definitely. So for those first two, the first run of the week, you probably won't need any sort of nutrition. If you're kind of like 5 to 6K, you should be fine. You can though start bringing, like, if you're gonna, whatever you decide to do, you could start bringing something with you in a sense of like a water, just to get used to holding it. So depends on what you want to do. Like if you do some event, they'll have aid stations, they'll have them there. But a lot of aid stations, the Dublin marathons were probably the exceptions where they actually give you a bottle, but a lot of them might just be a cup, literally a cup with a bit of water and stuff like that. So, but you might want to have something yourself, and you might want to be something specific. So there's, if that's the case, and you want to like a bottle, and we'll go through the different types of nutrition, it might just be water, but it's no harm to bring it with you just to get used to holding it, and then taking the odd sip. But it's not necessarily going to be something you need for the actual 5 or 6K run, but definitely to get used to having it. The same for the second one. Once you start getting to that point of really, when you start running more than say an hour and a half, or training for an hour and a half, you really start to need to bring in that nutrition into it. So there's lots of things out there. I would tend to use energy gels. Is the thing that I would use when I'm running. So there's so many different brands out there. It really is a case of bit like the sort of the runners, and maybe more so about trial and error, because it really is dependent on what your stomach is going to be able to stomach in
Handle.
that regard, handle. Yeah, exactly. And what sort of gastro and things like that. It's different for everyone. I've used so many different brands before. So Elvery's have a brand in there. I can't try and remember the name of it. You've got things like, I use ones with Wiggle. There's Viper. There's SIS. There's I'm trying to think of the one in the, I don't know if it's a liter or a light or something. There's so many different gels and out there that it really is a case of, a lot of them will have like selections of different flavors. I mean, the flavors are okay. It's not really necessary, but most of
Yeah.
them you kind of taste. But you can go a lot of them, and you can buy a single gel. So go into somewhere like Elvery's, or you can go into even like Halfords have them in their cycling section or online, and just buy the odd one and literally just try them out. It's so, do them on some of your shorter runs to see how you feel with them. But if you, the way I would look at it is really, the way I work it myself is every sort of, I take a gel on time basis versus distance basis. So you need to start looking, thinking of your time. So I would take a gel roughly maybe every 40 minutes is the way I would do it. And especially for your long runs. And when you get into your long runs now, you're not waiting to failure to take it. So you're going to take it after the first 40 minutes. So once you're getting into those sort of like hour and a half runs, I will work that. I kind of really need one gel for this run. For a 2 hour run, I'm going to maybe take two gels, because I'm going to take one after 40 minutes or 45 minutes, which way maths you want to work out. And then I'm going to take another one after the next 40 minutes, even though I've only got 20 minutes left to run potentially in a 2 hour run. I'm still going to take that gel now to get into the rhythm of taking it every 40 minutes or so. So, you need to start building that in as soon as possible. but definitely onto the long runs. So then you have to get into the things like, okay, well, how am I going to carry these gels? How am I going to manage them? Do I need to shorts with pockets? Do I want to be able to bring a belt with me? Do I need to bring something that I can put on my arm or something? So it makes you start to think about planning and how I got to manage this stuff on it. Because if you find a particular gel that works well for you and settles your tummy and gives you the energy, the race itself might have a different sponsor and that gel might not be available. So then you have to think about the logistics. Or how am I going to need? Am I going to need 5 gels for this event? Do I need to want to bring a spare one with me? So do I want to bring 6? How do I carry 6 gels with me? So then you think, okay, do I carry 3 and give 3 to a friend on the course, or do I carry them all with me? So it starts making you think about your long-term kit, but on your training, even in your training, because you're going to be pretty unsupported doing your long runs, you need to bring those gels with you. So bit of trial and error, but definitely the way I would think of it is like every 40 minutes, I'm going to be taking some sort of gel. I tend to then just use water as a drink. I don't use sort of things like energy drinks as such. Um, I might put in a tablet or something like an electrolyte tablet. That works well again because it's just my stomach. For example, not to bash any brands, but something like Lucozade or Gatorade, they just don't settle with my stomach quite well. I find them too heavy in the sugar. So, and you're getting sugar from your gels as well. So you don't want to kind of double it in some ways. And
Yeah.
one gives you energy, but you don't want it sitting in your tummy. So I would use water, and then, or maybe with a tablet. What I find sometimes that works really well with water is just Diorolite, because it really gives you that sort of electrolyte boost, and just by sipping it. Um, and then the other thing that I use is actually a salt. And the salt that I use, unfortunately, you can only buy in the States, but you might be able to get it online. And it's a company called Base Salts, and it's literally just a salt that you kind of have in a little tube, and you lick your thumb and you lick the salt of it. But with some sort of salt tablet or something, it could be quite beneficial as well.
That's really interesting. And just regarding James carrying your gear, because I see a lot of
Yeah.
like advanced runners out running, and they
Yep.
either have a tiny, tiny little backpack with
Yeah.
a straw coming out, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
water straw.
Yeah. The
What
camelback
do,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, do you use anything like that, or do you use a belt
I,
or
I I have used them before, and I have used the camelbacks before purely for just training. Though I wouldn't use it on the run. They can be very useful. You can get a good bit in them, and I have used them. I used them very much when I was doing my Ironman and my marathon training previously. I wouldn't use it to go for actually on a race itself, because it'd be quite cumbersome, and they can be. It's sometimes it's like it can be quite sort of a lot of things to fiddle with. So I would try and think of whatever you're going to do in your training, you're going to replicate for your run. So there'll be plenty of aid stations, whatever event you do. So if you're happy just to take a cup of water and stuff, or bottles from the stations, they'll be absolutely fine. They will have, generally in a marathon, you maybe get them maybe 5 or 6 kilometers, so they'll be quite regular in a sense. So roughly maybe every that sort of um, 45 an hour such a worth of running, depending on how again fast you are, in a sense. So you get some sort of aid station. So there will be things out there. It depends how you want to take it in. Like a bottle, I would generally bring with me, if I'm bringing a bottle, maybe this biggest I'd bring is maybe like a half-liter bottle, because there's nothing stopping me. And I've done it before in races where I brought my bottle with me. I go to the table with the cups and I just pour the cups into my own bottle if they haven't got bottles, or I just take a new one with me. The camelbacks are really useful, but you've got to take it into account of what it could do to your posture and things like that as well. Things like bringing gels with you and stuff, you can get little belts that will have little holders that can put gels in them, or you've got things that you can go onto your arms, your sleeves, that you can put them into in that way and hold them on there, or you can put them into pockets, or you literally can just carry them. So it really depends on the sense of each individual. I think there's a belt at the moment that I haven't used, but it looks really good. It's almost just like a kind of similar to like will be a band. It's just kind of a material belt that just literally is elasticated and it's just supposed to sit around your tummy. That looks really good. I haven't used it, but for people I've spoken to, that looks really good, because you can put then in your gels in it. You can put a phone in it if you needed to, your keys, and it looks quite sort of comfortable from what I've seen. So that would be something that you need, something like that. And it really depends on what you want to bring with you, in a sense of that run, because you could go all out in a sense of like run with a phone. You could have the thing here. You could have the headphones. There's so much add-on stuff, but you want to keep it as well, in some ways, as simple as possible, um, to get through the run as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's simple. Um,
Mm,
James, just one thing I wanted to ask you was touch on nutrition for when you're running, you'd obviously run
mm,
after work on day one and day
mm.
two, yeah? So
Yeah,
would you run before, you'd obviously run before your dinner, you'd have your breakfast and lunch and then
yeah,
go straight out after work and bring
yeah.
your
So
gels.
yeah, there's two different ways, yeah, doing it. So if you're running first thing in the morning, which I've done both. I've done morning sort of routines and evening routines, depends on the situation. So I'm doing more evenings now because of my current situation. But if I was running in the morning time, I would run out with nothing. I would if it's a short run, very much I'd just go. If it was 5K or is there one of those beginning runs in the week, I would just go out. I wouldn't have anything to eat. I can run out on the night, fasting overnight as such. It's no big deal. You just go out and run. I probably wouldn't bring any. You might bring some water with me. If you're starting out, you're a little unsure. You will have enough energy in you from the dinner you've had before. You really will. If you're slightly unsure, like half a banana would be absolutely fine. If you're running in the
Brilliant.
evening time, yeah, you've had your breakfast, you've had your lunch, you come in the evening. I would just be going in straight up before dinner. You want to last thing you've wanted to eat. Ideally, if it was a meal, it'd probably be like 2 hours before. If it was a snack, like a banana or a bar of some sort, like an hour before, you'd be fine to go out. Then afterwards, um, and then from there you come back and then you'd have your dinner and things like after your long run, if you're preparing for your long run on the weekend, you want to have again get into a routine of have your dinner a little bit earlier. Don't want to be eating too late. You want to time it that you have the energy in your muscles. If you're getting up long run, I would be getting up early and getting out and doing it, so you can give yourself the maximum recovery time. Ideally, you want to get out and get into that starting at the same time. Ideally, if you could even try and work out when your event start time will be, you can really start to plan your day. So if the event is supposed to start around at 10 o'clock or something, you want to be running around 10 o'clock. And ideally, if you can start a little earlier, great, but get into that sort of routine of when you would be running. For a long run beforehand, again, so if you think I want to start running at 9, you've had some food the night before, you might still want to have something in that morning, something light, maybe like a small bowl of porridge or a banana or some brown toast with a bit of peanut butter or something on it. But you need to have that about an hour before you run. So you need to think, well, I need to get up, have something to eat, to give that time to settle to then go for my run. You don't want to be eating and then running 10 minutes later,
Yeah,
so because we want to get that digestion done. Not to get too crude, but we will, because this marathon running is like
yeah.
you also want to be have time to go to the loo as well. It's
Okay.
getting
Yeah,
your body into a routine. So because the last thing you want to be able to do is going out for a 16K run and you're 10K and thinking, damn, I need to go to the toilet, which has happened, and it happens to every
okay.
marathon runner. So
Yeah.
you want to get your body into a
Adjust it.
routine. Yeah. So you might think, well, ideally on a Friday, obviously your work time and things like that, but you think, okay, I might not get home from work to eat on a Friday till 7. Okay. I know I'll give my body time to recover from eating that food, to have breakfast in the morning, that I can go to the toilet and then I can go do my run. So it's all these things you have to, you know, work out for yourself and routine. So when we talk about nutrition outside of running, it's things like, make sure your nutrition is on point in the sense of you're getting the mix of carbs, fiber, food. The one thing is like, don't eat on the morning of your long run something that's really fibrous. Don't,
Because you'll have to go to the toilet.
you'll have to go to the toilet. So don't be, you can have a banana because it's more carbohydrate, but don't be eating loads of oranges and apples, because
Yeah,
or eating something like this, really high in fiber in the morning of your run or the marathon. You want to be then you're having something more dense. So plain porridge, a bagel with peanut butter, toast. You can have white toast. It's more about just a little bit of top up of carb than fiber.
fiber.
So
So
yeah,
regarding the night before, James, because I
yep,
know because I haven't ran a marathon, I just hear from
yep,
the girls that I train who have ran a marathon, carb loading. Like,
yeah.
would you carb load the night before, but not have the dinner
Is
too
it
late?
the interesting thing with, yeah, it's interesting with carb loading. in some ways it's kind of a bit of a myth, really,
Okay.
because the body can only and the muscles can only store so much glycogen and so much, which we mean is energy. They can only store so much sugar in the muscles. So the way I did it, in the sense of you should be building, and say as we're going each week in your long run, the long run should be getting more challenging each week. So in some ways you're using slightly more energy each week, but ideally you will need to eat more, no question about it. But really, the dinner, in a sense, the night before your long run should really be matching and sort of the same as what you would have before the marathon. Because if you run a 20 miler, there's a point where you can't eat anymore. It's not gonna go into the muscles. You know what I mean? So the carb loading thing. So I was, whenever I did any of my marathons or any of the training I've done over the last number of years, my night before meal was almost identical to for every Friday. So I always did my long session on a Saturday, and my Friday night meal was almost identical. And it would just be some sort of spaghetti with meatballs in a tomato sauce, a homemade sort of spaghetti meatballs with some garlic bread. The portion size really didn't change that much. And so when it came to actually the night before a marathon, I was eating the same thing because my body had adjusted to it. There isn't, you could think, okay, you can maybe have a little bit of, say, extra dessert or something, but there isn't this sort of thing of like, oh, I had to eat loads and loads of pasta, because that's just going to sit in your stomach. The idea of your meal before your run or the meal before your marathon is to store up those muscles with as much glycogen as it can, but it can only store so much. So you're going to get maybe sort of that sort of limit of maybe your long run distance, maybe that sort of 3 to 4 hours of continuous exercise, and you're going to be depleted. But you eating more the night before wouldn't have made any effect to that. Like
Okay.
there's a point of failure. So don't get obsessed with the carb loading thing. Build that Friday night or the whatever that night before meal before your long run should mirror whatever you have the night before the marathon. There should be no difference. It isn't this thing of I need to eat more because I'm carb loading. No, no, no. Because you need to keep that meal as consistent as possible.
So
Don't
you're,
go for it.
yeah.
Yes, your body's used to it, because if you got to the point where you got your nutrition on point the whole way through your marathon program, and the week leading up to your marathon you think, well, I can eat all the cake and all the pasta in the world, you're just going to get ill, no
Yeah. Or
question.
Chinese the night before your toilet.
No, it,
Yeah.
no, it's you exactly. You've got to get into a.
Yeah.
Everything is focused towards that one day. So everything you've got to start getting on point. That it's like, so you could be doing a marathon that's abroad, for example, or somewhere. So whenever I used to do that, I we myself and my wife, who we trained together, is like we started going self catering, because it's like, no, I want to make spaghetti bolognese. You know what I mean? Because it's like that's, I know, the meal that's going to fit sit what I find in my stomach. Something spaghetti, pasta. The chicken and broccoli is quite a traditional one as well. Something that's quite simple, that's quite light. Avoid the overeating thing before you're running,
Okay.
because you just feel ill. It's so I would take it in a sense of things like the way, very specific to me, because everyone's different in sense of food, but it'd be like, you know 60 to 80 grams of dry pasta, your meat, your protein in there, your sauce, and we had the extra bit of carb in sense of some bread, but you could just have extra pasta in there or something, like, but have that as the meal the night before every long run. That should replicate your night before marathon meal.
Yeah. So you're in routine and your stomach gets used to it. What about
Absolutely.
post nutrition then? Do you
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
do you take extra amino acids in the form of protein powder, or do you just get a
I
good nutritious meal in to
Yeah, I
replenish
used
back
to.
your muscles?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I did it when I started. I used to did take sort of after sort of protein powder afterwards. I've steered away from it. Once I went into Ironman training, to be honest, you can take it. It serves a purpose. I don't do it personally anymore. Again, I get routines of the same meals afterwards. What I find the best works for me afterwards is, I tend to go to eggs. So it'd be things like, very simple. So like either boiled eggs, scrambled eggs. So I would go maybe like 3 eggs, and then sort of like again with something like some plain toast, maybe a little bit of cheese, some ham, and then maybe uh, and then we'd be looking at things like, you could equally go for the protein powder, but chocolate milkshake is probably one of the best reasons to start marathon running, because chocolate milk is just like, the sort of like, whatever they are, like Avamore or whatever the brands of chocolate milk, a sort of like a one of those sort of the
Half
half-liter
cartons.
bottles, yeah, half
Yeah.
cartons of chocolate milk, fantastic amount of calories to replenish you in there. Um, and it's kind of arguably similar to getting sort of like having a protein powder with milk anyway.
There's 20
So
grams of protein in that carton.
massive, exactly. So
Yeah.
because the thing is, like, again, the sort of the one there is almost like you're so hungry it's just to throw all the food into you, but you can still have some gastro issues if you throw too much in. So my advice for after doing a long run is little and often. So
Yes.
I would have something like maybe some eggs or something, and then I might then, or I could, and then in maybe an hour or so or something, I still feel hungry. It's like, okay, now I'm going to have some porridge, or the other way around. I'm going to have some porridge or something, then I'm going to have some eggs, and then I'm going to have my milkshake, and then I'll have my dinner, as opposed to trying to eat everything in once. You'll feel like you want to, but you have to kind of let your stomach settle, have the first bit of food, get something into you, within sort of maybe 30 to 40 minutes after your run. So whatever's the handiest. So if it's not eggs, get some sort of, and I would go for porridge to get that carbohydrate in. Because if you go for something other, sort of some of the cereal or something, it's not going to do what you
Yeah.
want. You want something
It's
to get
putting
into your
sugar on
stomach.
sugar. Yeah.
Yeah, get something into you that's kind of going to be slow digestible, but it's good with high density and carbohydrate. And then you could have a bit of fruit on it then as well. And then maybe an hour or so. So way I would normally do it is kind of like I come in from my long run. I do need some food straight away, so I'd go for the porridge there because it's quite quick and easy. You can do ones in the microwave, anything like that. Just porridge, normal porridge with water in the microwave. You can have it within a couple of minutes, and you get some immediate sort of food into you. Then I would go get changed, my shower and everything. By the time I've done that, a bit of a cool down, right, I'm ready for more food now. Now I'll have my eggs. Takes a little bit longer to prepare, and then you've had that with your milkshake or whatever. And then in the evening, I'd be going for a sort of traditional dinner in a sense of like protein with some sort of grains or something and some vegetables. It's real sort of no difference in a sense.
Basic.
This
Yeah.
basic, just get those nutritions into you. Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah. I like that because if you're starting off, my mentality would be, and this is me being my mentality, I'd be like, oh, I'm going
yep,
out for a big, massive meal now that night.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
first thing that would tick off with me, because I've stomach issues as well, I have a
yeah,
good stomach, but
yeah,
if I eat too much of the wrong foods or too much
yeah,
synthetic foods like protein
yeah,
powder and stuff like that, and not
yeah,
real food, my
yeah,
stomach would be just swollen.
yeah,
So that's a good
yeah.
point. I like that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's this really big thing in a sense of like with the nutrition stuff, like your food, whatever you eat, the day-to-day food should be the first thing you go to. And, you know, the last thing you need to, if you're having like real problems with stomach and stuff, going to some sort of protein powder or after specific food might be beneficial for you. But I would say if you're coming at from the point that the most of us, which is kind of that you're doing this for fun, you're doing this because it's a challenge, you don't need to spend 40 euros on a protein powder when a €2 milkshake is going to do the same job. You don't need to think, oh, I'm going to have to do all this fancy type of nutrition. It's like, no, whatever you're doing is simple. A few adjustments might need it. So you might need to eat a little bit more. So if you were having your evening meal, it might be like, okay, I would normally eat a small chicken breast. Maybe it's a medium one or it's a large one. Or if you need to eat more, it's like, okay, well, actually, I'm going to have more veg. I'm going to have more grains. I'm going to, whatever it is. So your overall intake will have to increase. No doubt about it. You're going to have to eat more calories
Yeah.
because you're going to be
Yeah.
using a lot more, but you have to kind of use them sensibly. So it's kind of like, and the whole saying you can't unrun a bad diet, but there's definitely benefits to marathon runnings where you can have a little bit of cake. You
Extra
can
bits.
have,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like you have to
Be
manage it because
sensible.
be sensible because there's a danger. And it's like I'll use it. It's like when you're going into sort of distance when I'm training for Ironman, that I'm getting to points where I'm maybe consuming 3,000 calories a day, but you quickly notice when you're not training for Ironman and you're consuming 3,000 calories a day.
It'll
So
pile
you
on.
have to,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you have to be careful when you're doing your marathon training that because there's a point where you will stop that you don't carry on eating as if you're training for a marathon because your
Yeah.
weight will, increase
So,
immediately.
sorry, I just have to.
Yeah.
So the point would be then just regarding, because it is a big issue with even men and women. You don't want to be coming post marathon and then piling on all this weight, because
Yeah.
then you're just going to feel crap. So the
Yeah.
main thing is, for my point of view, and just knowing people who are in the middle of training for marathons, it's not a free for all that you can eat bars of
No.
chocolate and fill. The
Nope.
way I look at it is, do you want to get an egg that's in a farm that's not a good quality, or do you want to get a free
Yeah.
ranged egg? Um,
Yeah.
both are going to give you an equal amount of nutrients, but the better nutrient and the better one that's
Yeah.
going to support you with energy is the free range egg.
Absolutely.
So, as
Yeah.
I just say to the girls and anyone that I speak to is, do you want to go into the marathon with 50% less energy, but you'll be able to do it? Or do you want to go in with 80% full energy from supporting yourself with good supporting food, that's going to
Absolutely.
see you through and post? So, in other
Yeah.
words, not to have your diet, okay, after after your long run, I'm
Yeah.
going to have a cake now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Eat
exactly. It's like
sensibly.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with having it here and there. And but the way thing is, like, as long as you plan it, and that's the
Yeah.
key thing, is like, it's like plan it. It's like, so if you're going to have, say, a slice of cake or something, and you're going to do that, and I'll be honest, I do myself,
Yeah,
but
so
the
do
way
I, but just not for
is,
recovery food. Yeah.
and it's part of the nutrition plan. So that piece of cake or those biscuits or whatever I'm having is like, they're not additional calories, they're in the calorie count. So that's the key.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's part of it. So, and so it's and you're trying to avoid it in the sense of, I'm rewarding myself for doing the long run, so I'll have some cake, as opposed to, no, I'm just having cake because I enjoy having cake, and I know that as
Yeah.
part of my nutrition plan, that on this day, this week, or out of the 2 weeks, then it's part of the plan. But you
Yeah.
also got to get into that shift, and I like the way you said it there. Is like, is it aiding your next run? Is it aiding your goals towards the marathon? And this, I don't know if you were going to mention, but this to me touches onto the point of alcohol in a sense of this as
Yes.
well.
I was
Um,
just thinking about alcohol.
yeah, because, say, like, I would have been before, and we said before, when I got into running, so before that, back in sort of 2012 previously, I would have been a Friday night going to the pub or get some drinks on the way home every Friday night. Would have had a few cans, and maybe 3 to 4 pints or whatever at that point. But when I got into running, and I would have been, not necessarily all during the week, but definitely a weekend, I would have drank. And then I got into running, and I really, when I went for the Dublin Marathon, I was like, I really want to give this a go. And I was like, I did my run on a Saturday morning. My long run was a Saturday morning. And I was like, well, if I want to run Saturday morning and I want to get the most out of it, I can't drink on a Friday night, because I can't get up at 6 in the morning to get out for 7 or 8 and be drinking the night before, even just one drink. So I stopped drinking on a Friday, and I stopped drinking entirely during the week. But I still had a drink maybe on the Saturday night. I'd have a bottle of beer or something after the long run on the Saturday. And then, but as I progressed and progressed into more marathons and into triathlon and Ironman, I actually just stopped drinking entirely, and I maybe have the odd non-alcoholic beer or something like that. In the last while, when I'm not training as much, I might have an odd beer in there and everything. But if you're getting into marathon programs, you can't drink the night before your long run. You just can't. It's going to have a detrimental effect to your running, and I would recommend that you really bring down your alcohol intake, just in general for your health, but it's going to have a detrimental effect to your running. Absolutely. So it's something you have to really commit to. And I would recommend, like, the night, after your run, you might have one. But I found as well, drinking after a long run, I felt real queasy. So you can try it, but I got to the point, it's like, no, I don't want that. I'll stick
Yeah.
with a cup of tea or a green tea or something like that, because your stomach is going to go through a huge amount. You really
Yeah.
have to accept that.
Yeah, well, your body, as you mentioned
Huge.
before, like your nervous system, your sympathetic
Mm.
system, everything's under pressure.
Ah,
And if you're
massive.
putting in the wrong nutrition on
Yeah.
top of
Yeah.
this
Yep.
massive training,
Yeah.
and then using synthetic protein powder and all that,
Yeah.
it's not good. So
Yeah. It's not
get
going
the
to
right
work.
nutrition. James,
Absolutely.
we're just gone over the hour. So just to
Yeah.
finish,
Yeah.
post marathon. So I've ran the marathon. I feel great.
Yep.
I'm through the finish line. I've done all my cool down. I had a shower. What's
Yeah.
the plan of action for the next 3 weeks?
So yeah, so definitely, I think, with the once you've finished your marathon, because it is a huge, huge achievement, and wherever you come in it, you should be really proud. So the first thing you have to do is just enjoy it.
Yeah.
because really, really sort of accept what you do. It's like, so as much as the marathon running is huge, the percentage of people who actually do it is still really quite small. So you really have to just let it soak into you. There's the whole thing of post-marathon blues, because you've been building up to this thing for so long, and then it's, in some ways, it's over before you know it. So allow yourself, like myself, wear the jersey, sitting in it, just annoy everyone who'll come near you with you and talk about it. So accept and enjoy it. Real, in sense of seriousness, you're going to have to just take some rest and recovery. Might not be immediately, but in the week afterwards, literally book in a sports massage, get someone in, get a work in that massage. If you want to really get into the recovery straight away, if you haven't had any real injuries, I'd say by the following week, within that week, just try and get up for a real light jog, sort of
Okay.
3K, 15, 20 minutes. Don't bring a watch with you. Don't bring anything with you. Don't bring any phone, water, anything. And literally
Just
just
to
go for a
loosen out.
nice, just to loosen out, gentle jog. You can start doing your sort of mobility work, sort of just nice and slow stretching, get those muscles moving again, your activation work, but just ease back into anything. Really take it nice and slow,
Yeah.
because you will be buzzing and you'll be kind of like, oh, I need to go again. But it can take, if you're the first time marathon runners, and sort of the most of us average marathon runners, it takes a full month to 6 weeks for your body to recover from a marathon. So it
Wow.
takes a
So you
long
need the
time. You need that recovery. So anything you're doing afterwards, get a nice, almost think you're going back to couch to 5K in some
I was
ways. You know what I
just about
mean?
to say
Where
that. Yeah.
you're kind of you're kind of really taking it slow. It may take you just that month. So as you're not going back to that full 8 weeks to couch to 5K, you'll have that base fitness, but your recovery is really going to take some time. If you go completely cold turkey in sense of just stop running entirely, then your base is going to be lower when you want to come back, if you want to come back. So I would take it, change something else, go back into the gym, do some just conditioning work, get your mobility back, go swimming, do something. But I'd say within a week, you want to start doing something light again. Absolutely. But
Yeah,
and then
that's
you
good.
and get that food, that really good nutrition into you. You're going to feel starving for the following week, for the following 2 weeks. You're going to want to eat everything, and you do need to replace the calories again, but replace them with as much good as
Good
possible.
food.
Definitely treat yourself, because you've done a great thing. But the other thing is that you have to note, if you've given up or reduced your alcohol intake over those 16 weeks, I wouldn't suggest going out on a session, because you'll be over quickly.
You'd be
You'll be
pissed.
on the you'll be on the floor real quickly. But you have to really be managing yourself in those first few weeks afterwards. Don't forget, your immune system is going to be quite low, so you might need to just really focus on your recovery. Don't be surprised if you get a head cold or something. So really think of those things like your vitamins and stuff. Making sure those really good nutrition foods are there to support your immune system in
Yeah.
that post marathon period as well.
Replenish yourself. Yeah. It
Yeah,
might be
absolutely,
probably no harm at that stage getting a multivitamin or something in
absolutely,
as an extra
definitely.
help, or maybe the food
Yeah.
prepped for a week, that
Oh
you have
yeah,
the food ready to go.
absolutely.
Proteins, veg, fruits,
Yeah,
everything.
absolutely. I think there's so much more obviously we could talk about. So
Oh, there
if
is. I could stay
people
here
if
all
people
day.
yeah, no, and I think if people really want to know more about it, we can do specific different things again. It'd be great. We could look at that again if people want it.
Definitely, James, there is a lot there. Like it's an hour and 17 minutes. So what I might do with this video is I'll put it up on the podcast, but what I'll do is I'll save the video and put it up on the YouTube
Yep,
channel. Because it's such a long video, I'll find it hard to
yep,
put it up somewhere else. So I'll stick it up
yep,
on my
yep.
YouTube channel, and at least it's
Brilliant.
there then as a Pacific hour
Yeah,
and 20 minutes off. I'm starting from scratch. I want to run a marathon at
yeah,
the end of the year. I think you gave loads there. I really did.
brilliant.
I know you could go into it a lot more in detail,
Yep,
but I think
as a starter.
definitely if you're planning on running a marathon, I think you should get a coach like James, because
Yeah,
I think if I was doing it, I would need the accountability, the support, and the challenges that lay ahead, that I could just
yeah,
contact you and go, James, this happened, what'll I do? And
yeah,
just the
absolutely.
support there as well, I think more
Yeah.
so than anything else.
Yeah, I know that's fantastic, and I think the having that support with other people around you, whether it be other runners or a coach or someone who's done it before, it is really beneficial, because any question you think is a silly question, someone has asked before, and it's asking those questions that's going to give you ideally the shortcut that you don't make those mistakes and you could find out beforehand.
Yeah.
You can learn from mistakes, absolutely, but if you can go take a shortcut and that, and the thing is, like, we haven't within this time frame, because it wasn't the focus, but we haven't even got into the sort of where I come really into it in the sense of mindset and focus and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So we'll do that. I'll do as a separate piece on that, even myself and that as well. And anybody has any questions on it, because that's a huge element to it as well. But absolutely, having that support there will definitely give you the benefit of getting through the training and through the event itself.
And the mindset, because if you're
Yeah,
training on your own, you need the
it's tough.
accountability of a check-in.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. James, I'm going to leave it at that, but definitely tag me on any videos you put up
Yep,
or anything like that, and I'll
will
share them
do.
around to the girls as well. And if there's any questions, I always look for feedback from videos and podcasts and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So definitely don't be afraid. James, where can people find you on social media and online so they can tag you?
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. So I'm so I'll be on Instagram and Facebook. So it's James Dean Coaching. And then if you're on LinkedIn as well, you can find me James Dean there. So those are where the social medias that I will be on. So yeah, James Dean Coaching.
Great. And you do programs for people then for marathons and coaching.
Absolutely, yeah. So primarily, so it's mindset coaching for marathons, and then I have a huge variety of sort of actual training programs that I've developed that you can use, and it's kind of like, so my coaching is very much in sense of bringing you through that process over the weeks where you'll be training for your marathon, and in sense of supporting you along the way. And the way I said, there's all different types, and I will actually design programs around you. So when we talk about 3 trainings a week, if you've got a slightly different schedule, I'll design a program that will fit your schedule as well.
Yeah, which is brilliant, which is
Yeah,
deadly. Well, you've got me
yeah.
motivated now to get my running up.
Great
Well,
stuff.
James, thanks a mil. And for anyone listening to this, definitely tag myself and James. If you have any more
Yeah,
questions related to marathons, get on to James. And James will be only too delighted to answer them.
absolutely.
Great.
Thanks, Karina.
James, thanks a mil. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks,
Take care.
James. Bye.
Bye.